Coming up this week on the Digital Lifestyle Show 840, we have Clint Rutkas from Microsoft join us to talk about PowerToys. Clint's leading the PowerToys project, an open source project, and we'll be talking about why open source, how it works with the community, some of the fantastic features of PowerToys and why you should be using it. So let's get straight to Clint and Gary. Clint, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Yeah, and it's brilliant to get you on the show. We've talked about PowerToys many times on the show in the past. We are probably, I would say, veteran PowerToys users. We did use the Windows 95 version as well, so we will touch on that. But we're also using, as I was connecting my Surface up tonight to my monitor, I lost my mouse cursor and did the old double control thing and got the mouse cursor thing. And I must admit, I think that's my favorite thing when using dual monitors of all the tools. But anyway, we'll come back to that. Okay. And we'll come back to you. But yeah, we're talking PowerToys tonight. And yeah, it's great to get you on the show. So PowerToys is a great set of tools that Microsoft have got that for really enhancing Windows. But I want to go back to the beginning, the origins of PowerToys. We've got some questions as well. But let's talk about you first. When you so how did you get started at Microsoft, and how long have you been at Microsoft now?
I've been at Microsoft going on almost 14 years. It's been a while. Yeah, it's wow, that's actually something like 14, maybe 15. It's been a while. Long ago, what actually got me hired on was for fun, I built a computer-controlled disco dance floor, and then I blogged about it. And the person that I ended up working for them, Dan Fernandez, said, "Oh my God, this is really cool. Would you like to write an article for us?" And then I did a couple other things for them. Fast forward about 6 months, I was asked to interview, and then I said yes. And then I worked as an academic advocate for a couple of years. Then I joined Channel 9. I worked on Halo, and then I joined Windows.
Fantastic. So you've seen all the changes. We'll be talking the topic of open source quite a bit, but I guess you've really seen the change in how Microsoft treats open source from when you started to where we are now.
Yeah, so when I ran Coding for Fun way back in the day, and for Windows Phone.
Oh yeah, used that myself. Yeah.
Yeah, so for Windows Phone, I helped write the Coding for Fun toolkit, which was used in a bunch of applications. Like the Twitter app used it, even on Windows Phone. So yeah, that was open source. I think it was on Codeplex. And yeah, that was like one of the early open source projects back in the day. And then now here we are as one of the top open source contributors in the world.
Yeah, it's come a long way, and it was something we've mentioned a few times, Gary.
It certainly has. The thing I always remember you being famous for, that, Clint, was firing T-shirts at people at Mix.
I did do that. I built a computer-controlled disco. I'm sorry, a computer-controlled robot that was powered by a Windows Phone. Even that story in itself was just insane for like how the idea came about. And then it was literally being handed a prototype phone and saying like, "There's only a couple of these in existence, please don't break it." And then literally as that software is being written and honed, we're trying to build out a demo of a robot that cannot be like, it moves, it like you can't fake that, it has to work, and try to pull that off. I think we had like 2 weeks to pull it off, including ordering all the parts and building it. I would like to thank my coworkers for how loud I was in the office. There was one project where I think I broke through a wall. There was I think once I had to use a fire extinguisher once. So yeah. Fun times. I loved working on Channel 9.
Yeah, Channel 9 was great. It's a great resource, and it was kind of, I think now all the the documentation is so centrally organized and everything else. But kind of Channel 9 had kind of have this kind of indie vibe to it as well, didn't it? That was kind of, especially back then when that started, Microsoft was quite straight-laced in many aspects, and that really was a bit different and a bit looser and had kind of fun aspect to it.
Well, I would say like kind of Jeff Sandquist always used the line, I believe it was like peer-to-peer over a beer. Like it was, you had people like Peter or Charles Torrey going to your office and saying, "What are you working on?" And you got to see what people did. This was like before YouTube, so just what they were doing wasn't really heard of in the industry, and now it's fairly commonplace. Like right now, you're literally seeing my office, and this is my wife's side. And you can see some, like the workbench I haven't finished on that side, and some Valentine's decorations, and my Roomba. So it's like, hey, this is my house. So come on in. Let's go have a beer.
Yeah,
or a tasty beverage if you like coffee. So like right now I'm drinking coffee.
Well, yeah, it is your morning. It's an evening for us, so it's more beer time for us.
Or a giant cup of tea.
Yeah. That is a big cup that you've got there. So anyway, we're going to talk in PowerToys tonight. So just take us back, because PowerToys is kind of back. But do you take us back to the origin? What was PowerToys? When did it initially kick off?
So PowerToys was in Windows 95. There was a Windows XP version also. Raymond Chen was definitely involved, and I'm assuming other people. And I say probably because in the 95 era, I think I was in maybe middle school or high school. So
you weren't leading the project then?
I was not leading the project.
Okay.
My mom would probably be fairly upset with me, maybe happy because I would have some interesting stock options. But fast forward, like I would say, actually, the heart of PowerToys has always been, I would say, incubation. Like you look at some of the things that was in the PowerToys from Windows 95. One of them was the when you put in a CD, it auto loads. Nowadays, you're like, yeah, no crap. Yeah. But back in Windows 95, how many computers had a CD-ROM drive? Very few, and it became this thing. So, so a bunch of those utilities and things that you were like were niche became part of the operating system. So, power users and developers tend to be the bleeding edge of the ecosystem. We buy insane stuff. Like we're the people that will buy the ultra screen, the ultra wide monitors are this big. And like right now I have dual 27-inch 4K monitors, for instance. At work, I do have one of the insane wide screens. And that's where things like fancy zones come in. We're literally the edge case of certain things, and when Windows builds out features, it builds it for over a billion people. So they're two different audiences, and not everyone will have this insane monitor, but you want to think about it and account for it. So like Fancy Zones is intentionally designed for that ultra wide, ultra big monitor. So we decided, hey, let's go slice up the monitor. Let's let the person do whatever they want. So
I remember what was the screen resolution one, this resolution picker. I think that was first in PowerToys, wasn't it? Before real time, before it was in Windows.
Probably. I would have to go review that.
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah. So I think that's what was great about it. It was these amazing set of things that we take for granted now, like you mentioned, the auto load, that just wasn't a thing at the time, and gradually we've got used to having those things into the operating system.
Or like another great thing is that it's a great chance. Like PowerToys is a great chance to to challenge an assumption. Just because something was always like it was, doesn't mean it should be like that. So, like Find My Mouse, you brought this up earlier, like the double click to control to find it. It's actually intentionally designed to draw your eye where the mouse is. That's why you have the screen that goes from here, or the spotlight goes from wide inward, versus the existing behavior radiates outward. Your eye isn't automatically drawn toward it. And then we've added in other additional accessibility features, and based on feedback, now we're gonna see like, hey, can we maybe get this in Windows? I don't know, but we're gonna try. And we'll provide this critical feedback in a rapid incubation system back into Windows.
Which is exactly what was going to. The next question would be: is why is PowerToys? Because PowerToys went away. You mentioned the last XP. It went away for a while. Why is it back now?
So I think it was Build 2019. We kind of talked about it on the show floor. There was I'm blanking on the exact name of it, but it was kind of like us pitching ideas to the audience, saying, "What would you like? Here's this idea." It was like a tech sneak peek. That's what it was, tech sneak peek, and showing off like, "Hey, we have this idea, PowerToys." It's like old school origins. I think the icon even was like super, just like pixel art back then when we showed it off, and we said, is this something that you'd be interested in? We literally overflowed the area, and it was intentionally designed to only be in person, but we overflowed it 3 times. So that's a strong signal to us, like there is interest. We launched an empty GitHub repository at that point and said, what do you want? And in under 24 hours, I had over 5,000 stars. Note, this is an empty repository. So fast forward, built some cool stuff. Fancy Zones was one of the first things that we released. And kind of our philosophy has always been little by little. So it may not be perfect the first time, but we're going to iterate and iterate and iterate and then make it great. We also have another design philosophy of, I call it minimal lovable product. So when I say minimal lovable, I mean, we will not ship something that does not, like, you will not have a good initial first experience. It may, like I said, it may not be perfect, but it should solve the critical needs and purpose. So like, Find My Mouse. We took a bet knowing that people will probably want to shake and have it activate. But we decided, you know what? Double click and control, we think it's lovable. So come the end of February 2022 release, we will add in the shaking ability. That is actually in our main branch currently. It got checked in a couple days ago. So all these things, like we're building it out, we're getting feedback, and based on feedback, then we continually iterate it. We're a super small team, and then we also because we have community members, it helps us build out more quicker. It actually got us in trouble when we first launched because we hadn't, I wanted to like battle harden the core and made stuff stable. So we grew from like 3 or 4 utilities to about 10. And that actually kind of got us in trouble because then we had to start figuring out what bugs do we prioritize. So we went into, I would say, stability mode. So we kept on trying to fix bugs, make things more lovable, fix features, and that took us a little bit. And now you're starting to see us, great. We feel like we're stable and continue to push out new stuff. So now that's where you're witnessing in the past couple months, new stuff, new cool things. Just super excited for what's coming out.
So you mentioned about on GitHub and that. So why choose open source? I mean, this is Microsoft. This is a commercial product. Windows. Why go down that route? And like I said earlier as well, Microsoft have really changed its attitude to open source. So why choose that time to go that route?
It's a great chance to show what you can do with Windows. Show how to build certain things. Like, we're doing insane stuff. So if someone wants to fork our project or make their something fantastic, great, do that. We're all for it. It's better together. PowerToys also will not solve everything. We will not build out like this insane like photo editing app or resizing app. We're going to build something that's good enough that solves most cases, and there will be software that will solve it better. And if you need that better, please, by all means, use that better piece of software. Like if you look at our spec for screen recording, our philosophy is we want a minimal screen recorder, which is basically we record the screen or subset of the screen. You can trim and export. That's about all. We're not talking about adding in overlays and a bunch of other things, because there's other software that can do it and do it better. We're going back to, we are well aware of how many resources we have from a team stance, and that's how we scale. We think of what's a good baseline.
So contributing to this project then, is this the team within Microsoft? Have you got the community in it? Is it a combination of both?
It's a combination of both. It's a combination of both. Like I said, we scale because of the community. About half the utilities and half the things are based in the community. So our contribution guidelines are basically, let's have a conversation before anything is written, so everyone understands how things are going to work, what's the code, how we're thinking about implementation. And from there, if it's a community member, we, both our side and them, know how things should kind of work. Are we using private APIs, which is a big no-no? Are we going to use C#, C++, like something else? Like having all these design discussions early on helps make sure that everyone has a great output.
And I suppose it's a great example of the community and open source community working with Microsoft on a product set within the core, which works with the core Windows system. But it's a great example of how the community can work in an open source project with you guys.
Yep, and a lot of it is like we're trying to see what things resonate with people. So one of the tools that was built out was Awake, which is Mac OS has a thing called Caffeinate built into the OS. So we have we created a variant to help keep the computer awake, because there are scenarios where you need to keep it awake. Dan Delamarski used to work for Microsoft in a different division. He now works at Netlify, and he's like, hey, me and him were nerding out, and one of the things that PowerToys has is we get a lot of incoming issues, whether they're feature requests or bugs and all this stuff. So we spend a lot of time deduplication. So then the question becomes, how do you figure out centers of gravity? And a center of gravity for us is fairly important because like mouse shaking. People could either say, yes, I want this feature in the GitHub issue, or they created a new issue. But if you create a new issue and we duplicate it against the existing one, that doesn't kind of totally show up. So we Dan helped build out a tool called Gravity where now we can start seeing how many people have duplicated items against one another. So that's an additional signal now we can see on top of comments, on top of reactions and thumbs up, as how important is something for us to focus on. Like, is this a top community ask, or is it something else?
Yeah, so that's a great example of you've been able to work with the community, not specifically tied to this product that you're working on, but it's just a great way of working. Yeah.
So yeah, and like I said, it was something he built and used the GraphQL side for GitHub, and we created a cool little query, and then honestly, it's invaluable for me to be able to see where things are happening, and then just even getting the feedback from the community. So there was a .NET runtime update, and it turns out we had a bug in our installer. So from that, we quickly created a hotfix for the installer because of what the community told us. Like, we thought we had updated our installer correctly. Turns out we had a bug.
Yeah, that's great. And then you get that feedback straight away from the community.
Yeah, and that lets us quickly rev and iterate in scenarios that we wouldn't normally be able to do. So we literally put out a hotfix, I think, in 2 days. Like, we saw the noise, tested the fix, and then we released. So I was fairly happy and proud that we managed to pull that off in about 2 days.
Yeah, so I guess you get a much quicker turnaround than you would if you didn't have that community involvement.
It lets us test at a scale that we would not be able to. So there's tons of different permutations. Just the amount of different permutations someone can mess with their operating system and customize it and tweak it is mind-baffling, to the point of, like, at times we're like, I did not even know you could do that. Bravo. Okay, let's go figure out how we fix this. So
yeah, well, that's the thing we always think of Windows. You know, the fact that you've got a billion odd devices with almost a billion combinations of hardware and software. That and it's amazing that it all still works at all.
Video conference mute taught us a very interesting lesson of all the different ways someone can tweak stuff, and when we make assumptions, we probably shouldn't make assumptions.
Well, let's dive into some of the features then that you've got in there. So if anybody hasn't seen PowerToys and the kind of things you can do with PowerToys, so I'll start. The first one I see, they're always on top. So I guess you've got a backstory really for all these features as well. Are these what came in from the community? These features, or these ones
pretty much
that
everything.
You had yourself, yeah.
Pretty much everything is based on community asks. Being a good PM at Microsoft, I have opinions, but data really does help solidify that what we focus on. So always on top was an old school ask, but we also do know from data it was had tons of reactions. It had tons of duplication. So the Gravity app said this is a center of gravity based on requests, and it had tons of comments. So for us, we knew how to do it. The big question for us became, how do you have the best interaction model? So how do you trigger a window to be always on top? Back in the day, like, you could just have everything in your task manager, but now you have apps that are grouped together and stuff. So how do you tell a window to set on top? So we said, hey, great, let's mimic Teams and have like the border when you share, along with to visually show you're doing something, along with do it with a keystroke. I know people want additional right click and set it to always on top via the context menu, so that might be something we'll look at in the future as well.
That's a really handy feature. I know a lot of people look to use that one, and it's very handy especially for developers as well. You can keep Visual Studio open or whatever you need. There's always somebody who's got some kind of.
It was like, if you need terminal, terminal actually has it built in.
Yeah.
Or a notepad. Like I am a notepad fiend for keeping notes. So like I always like having that front and center for whatever. I don't like sticky notes. Just doesn't like. It's notepad is built into me for muscle memory, so that's what I tend to use for notes.
Yeah, it's great. And I suppose that's a good example of something that it's not built into the core OS, but it's a great feature that power users would make advantage of.
Well, different apps use it, but there is no global way to set an app on top, and that's what we help do. is just set it to make it more global.
Yeah. And then I suppose in a similar way as well, you get the next feature, look at the awake option, which is something you can do if you go into. So, explain what the awake app is.
So awake is similar to the macOS Caffeinate app. The key thing is like it keeps your computer awake. There are certain ways that a IT admin or someone can make your computer turn off for power savings measures. And this could be a scenario where you don't want it to do it. Long running processes and stuff. Occasionally you don't want it to. And if your computer turns off, bad things happen. I know back in the day when I was trying to do some 3D printing stuff, if your computer turned to sleep, it would stop mid-print. And you're like, no! It was like 4 hours of an 8-hour print job. So that is one of those tools. Like I know like I said, Dendel Amarski helped write that, and I think he was using it for ML model processing, if memory serves. Like he intentionally really needed it for that scenario, and that's what it did. It's like there's apps that jiggle your mouse and stuff. It uses a public API, just very similar to like if you watch a YouTube video, your computer will not lock. It will not go to sleep. So there's tons of different ways and interaction models that will make your computers not lock and not do all these things or go to sleep. But this is one that uses, like I said, a public API to allow your computer to stay awake.
Yeah, and it's great because you don't have to mess with your power settings. And in the past, I would have probably got in and changed settings, and yeah, you don't have to. Because I did that. I found it really useful because I messed about with Hyper-V images on an external USB drive, and when the Surface goes to sleep, it drops the connection, and then when you wake it back up, the virtual machine is blue screen because the drive disconnected.
Yep.
And this tool just solved that. So yeah, that it is a great little tool. The next one I was looking at as well, very similar, is Color Picker. Again, a very simple idea, but really useful.
Yep. So for those who never have had to use a color picker, you'll see occasionally apps have an eyedrop, and the idea is you go and pick it. Most of those tend to only work inside of the app. So I know for me, I tend to have to work across multiple things. And what you normally have to do to get this is take a screenshot, open up MS Paint, grab the eyedrop, transcode the 255 value of the RGB into hex, and then paste that hex value into whatever, for me, it would typically be XAML. That is a very long process, especially when you get the wrong code. And you're like, oh, I was like 2 pixels off or something.
Been that done.
So
Gary's nodding, yeah.
It's like, why is this not just built in? You could, for us, this is a totally changeable keystroke, but it's Shift Windows C by default. It pulls up Color Picker, and you can go in. If you hit the scroll wheel, you can zoom in. And then there's also an accessibility feature to tell you the rough value of what is being selected. And we say the rough value because interpretations of color change depending on the organization. So the color lime is a great example of, there are like 10 different variants of what someone says the color lime's exact code is. So our opinion is you have light green, green, dark, and there you have the bands, and the entire idea is get it good enough. Like if you are colorblind, this becomes invaluable.
Yeah, good. Very helpful tool. Graphics designers, developers, anybody, anything like that.
And there's a bunch of different formats you can pick. For me personally, I have a bunch of them turned off because I don't need certain formats. But the entire idea is like, if you need a Vec forward format, go nuts. We support it.
Now, the next one I want to talk about is probably the one that, well, it's the one you mentioned earlier on, and it's probably one of the most useful ones, I think, for anybody with large monitors, is their fancy zones.
So Fancy Zones is basically window snapping on steroids. So the reason being is it's on steroids is you can pick and choose whatever layout you want. So we have two different styles. One we refer to as a canvas based, and the next one is a grid based. So canvas is you create your windows and you can place them wherever you want. And then the grid based is imagine you have one giant grid and you can chop it up into as many pieces as you want. Now, I should say with the little star, I think in 55 and below, it's 40 zones max. And then come 56, it will be 128 zones.
Wow.
So, and each have pros and cons depending on what you want to do. I'm personally a grid-based person. There's a bunch of people that are canvas-based people, and we love you both. Great thing here also you can do is if you hold down the window top, hold down Shift and Control, you can actually make it snap to multiple zones. So you can make a window go from like this big to like the next zone below it or bigger. It's up to you how you need to choose and lay stuff out. So for me, I tend to have on my right-hand side my terminal and then a notepad, and then I have Visual Studio tends to be on the left-hand side.
And is this something that you think, if the Windows 11 team took a little bit of inspiration on the Snap Assist?
There was, the genesis of it was internally was called a Fix Hack Learn project. So there was a person that helped build out the core original PowerToys and helped create the kind of like yes, we should rejuvenate the PowerToys concept. Jeff Bogdan and Mike Harsh both helped think of it, along with another person, Brett Anderson, helped code it as well. So these are all, if you ever look way back in the day, I think his GitHub username is like Mr. Jukebox or something along those lines. He's one of the original authors of it, and a lot of it. There was multiple points when we were trying to kind of go through Style Cop and FX Cop to help boost up the code quality. I had to go walk down to their office and go, when you had this, there are some magic numbers. What are these magic numbers? And then help try to document them. So those same people help build out the snapping system as well.
Yeah, it's kind of I like the Windows 11 implementation of it. I pretty much use that all the time. But the PowerToys version gives you way more control. And if you've got, like you mentioned, if you've got a large monitors, you've got so much more you can do with it.
It is definitely one of those utilities where you have the large, massive audience, and then you have people that love to tweak and design and change everything. PowerToys caters to that heavily. And if people want certain things from Fancy Zones or PowerToys built into the operating system, we're all ears.
Yeah. And then the next one I want to mention, I guess you can see where this comes from. A lot of developers interested in it. It's the File Explorer add-ons, where you can do things like Markdown previews and PDF previews. This feels like another one that it's really driven by Windows users.
So yeah, these were like SVG is, for applications. For those who don't know what an SVG file is, it's a vector-based image file. So wouldn't it be fantastic if you're building out a scalable UX to have scalable graphic assets? And due to this, be great if you could actually visually see what that asset was. So we built out a thumbnail and preview system for that. Same thing with Markdown. Like, you have this file, is it, this file or that file? I have 4 different Markdown files that occasionally I have to go to, and I need to quickly glance, is this the one I want to open to, and do it. So we intentionally said, how can we make file preview actually useful for developers? And the answer is make it load said files and look like how we'd expect it. So one of the big ones we did was we leveraged the Visual Studio Code's view engine, Monaco, which is also another open source project. And that is what powers the developer file preview engine, which does about 150 different file types. So
yeah, I think this is one of your favorites, Gary.
It is. I absolutely love this. I mean, as a developer, long-time developer, and running a team of developers, we all love this. It's absolutely. I mean, especially the SVG, and it's something I guess I use every day. So it's
And that's fantastic, and that's what we hope is we solve the problem that makes people's lives easier, makes you more productive. Yeah. Like, why do I need to open up a JSON file when I can just quickly use the file preview engine?
Yeah, it all goes to the whole thing of the project, doesn't it? It just makes it. These are little things that make a big difference to end users.
Yep, that's kind of, it goes to, what can we do to make you more productive? How can we little quality of life improvements help make you more productive? Like the going back to the color picker, literally going from 5 steps to 1 step, that is a game changer. Like when we initially demoed the super rough version of that, I had 4 PMs in my team all hands go, give me that. And I'm like, it crashes every 3 minutes. They're like, I don't care, give it to me now. I'm like, okay. And that's where you like just seeing that sheer excitement about it, like to me resonates and makes me feel happy and like we solved problems. Going back to solving problems like keyboard manager and the mouse utilities, those are utilities that most people may not need, but if you need it, they become invaluable. So in the .55 release, we came out with mouse crosshairs. And this is a utility that was designed with the accessibility team for a set of users that have a vision disorder where, like, imagine like you're looking through a straw and you're trying to find your mouse. So what you'll do is you're scanning, and that becomes a big problem. So we worked with them. They said, hey, if they saw the Find My Mouse feature, can you come up with crosshairs? We're like, yeah, it's the same engine. Like we could bust that out pretty quickly. So we worked with them, figured out what was the requirements, what kind of options we need to work with. And so now a user, all they need to do is scan up and down, and then they'll find the horizontal bar, and then either go left or right, and if they hit the monitor bar border on the, let's say if they're on the left-hand side, great, I hit the monitor, let's go the other way, and they'll easily wayfind back to the mouse pointer. So we made something that was very difficult for someone, very easy, and that to me makes me happy. Same thing with like keyboard manager. When we released it, it was all about like, hey, I'm used to using this shortcut. I need that shortcut. Let me go remap stuff. So I always joked, I want Control F to find an Outlook, not forward the email. So that is what I typically use Keyboard Manager for. However, just when we released it, a person reached out and said, hey, this was a game changer for my son who had a disability and kept on hitting F1. For those who don't know what F1 does is it brings up help, which is good in many scenarios, but if you keep on accidentally triggering that, that becomes very disruptive. So he actually used Keyboard Manager to orphan the key. So then his son wasn't accidentally triggering this because his son had a disability and it made them more productive. So as a father, that made me like tug my heartstrings. So I was very, very pleased that we helped make at least one person's life more productive.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a brilliant example. And I didn't realize actually Keyboard Manager until I thought about it, is that it's per application, and just that use being able to change around the default behavior. If you get used to a certain application, you always hit the same key combination, then you can transfer that to another application. So it makes learning new applications easier as well. That muscle memory. Yeah, that's brilliant.
Muscle memory is super powerful.
Yeah. As my favorite one I want to talk about is the Run, PowerToys Run. And this has become my sort of the go-to way of launching applications. So how did this one come about?
It came about. We wanted a quick application launcher. Was the big thing. Was the general feedback was, I want to be able to execute applications extremely fast. That's the number one goal for PowerToys Run, is launch applications. So it's plugin based. It's based on another piece of open source, the Walks engine. And basically we've been continually iterating on it, and more and more and more. We just created a community member, just created a pull request to actually make it so will be .NET. I will say a modern .NET framework engine or runtime. Sorry, .NET runtime. Come .56, so the upcoming release. So we've deprecated the last piece of .NET framework in the utility, which makes me happy.
And the one you mentioned briefly before as well, which is something that we all perhaps use in the way we operate now, the video conference mute. Where did that one come from?
We were challenged by my general manager. So my general manager has a child roughly the same age as I do. And we're at the beginning of COVID was, oh my God, like we need a quick way to mute both your microphone and your video stream. And then it became, oh crap, like this is actually hard, like really hard. And the reason why it's hard is how do you do it agnostically? Because not everyone will run Microsoft Teams. They could be running Skype, Zoom, BlueJeans, Cisco WebEx, Google Hangouts, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. There's web clients. There's tons of different ways to do this. So how do you build out a way that you could do this anywhere in the OS? And the reason why I say that is like Teams, if Teams is in focus, you can keyboard shortcut it. You can keyboard shortcut both the camera and the microphone. I'm assuming all the other apps have very similar capability. The problem becomes if you're doing email. Now, if anyone has seen the BBC clip where the child busts into the door while the person is broadcasting live, that has happened to, I kid you not, every one of my teammates. It happened to me. I'm literally giving a presentation to some individuals, and my, at the time, 3-year-old busts in and I swear it was just like that video where he's just super proud, and he's like, hi, looking at the camera and stuff, and I'm just like, okay, I just lost my train of thought. I'm trying to get him out, and thankfully someone came in and covered me, but it was like, how do you hide that information as you're presenting and all that stuff? It became like, how do you help people be more productive and quickly mute and hide the video in that scenario? So the solution was come up with a basically person in the middle video driver, web driver. So we use direct show. So it goes from basically the camera to our middle driver, and it just basically sends the data right back out to the application. And then if you hit the keystroke, we inject black data, black pixels. I think you can change it also and insert a overlay image. So that way you can quickly blank out your camera, blank out your microphone. If you do the microphone style, it will do a global OS style mute of the microphone.
Yeah, then, really handy. Especially like you said, for where we are now.
Yeah, and the key thing here is like if I'm doing email and my kids start screaming, like I need the ability to quickly mute my microphone. And it's rather than go, oh no, oh no, oh no, I can just quickly hit the keystroke, boom, done. And all these keystrokes are customizable to fit what you feel is appropriate.
Yeah, it's a brilliant one, that. And there's some other areas. I don't want to go into more because I've got a couple of the questions for you, but I suppose perhaps one that everybody should, I think, should encourage everyone to look at is the keyboard shortcut guide, because that reveals so many things I didn't even know were possible.
Yeah, so that is
a question mark. Use it every day.
If ironically, if you said, Clint, this is something we should build, I would have laughed and said, yeah, you gotta be kidding me. Like, what power user would want this? And then it's honestly is one of the things progressively that is like a hidden delighter. There's very, very smart individuals that were like, what is this thing that's popping over my screen? Oh my gosh. And then they're like, oh, I didn't know about that shortcut. Oh, what about that?
Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
So the other interesting thing was we had proposed a different UX for it totally. And we had even gone so far as to start changing the default shortcuts. And then the community got real mad at us, which was shocking because everyone's like, yes, we love the new UX. We love it. We're like, sweet. Okay. Our default key shortcut's going to be window key shift /, which would be question mark. So the idea was window key question mark, and you get shortcut guide. Turns out people did not like that. They liked the idea of pressing and holding and having the overlay. So this actually caused us to pause and go, how do we do this better? How do we make this work across everything? So it actually caused us to rethink how we were going to implement Shortcut Guide V2 based on community feedback, just based on a single shortcut change.
Yeah, and that's great that you get the feedback like that, and you get the quick turnaround as well of features, and you can actually see what people are using, I suppose, that way as well. It's great, yeah.
And I think that's to me, one of the really powerful things is we ship monthly, and if we do need to do a hotfix, we tend to try to forward do that in the first week, if at all humanly possible.
Yeah. Now, one of the questions we've got sent in from a reader was, will there ever be third-party marketplace for user-created plugins?
I'm assuming that's for PowerToys Run. We have an open ask for kind of like how do you create third-party plugins? You've seen me kind of say in it like we're not there yet, and one of the reasons why we're not there yet is we're progressively upgrading critical resourcing. So when PowerToys Run was .NET Core, and then we did a .NET 5 upgrade in the January release, and that actually broke 2 community plugins. That there's nothing stopping someone from creating a plugin, but right now the system is not designed to be battle hardened. It's designed to work with the assumptions of what we ship works, and you could do it. There's nothing stopping it because the entire PowerToys Run system is plugin based, and that's how we're able to scale out and have all these different options. But another thing, like come the February release, we are going to be on .NET 6, so that very well could be another breaking change. But from our side right now is we do not want to take on that burden of being able to make the system backwards compatible or deal with the breaking changes, because we want to rapidly iterate on it. So it's something that we are aware of. We know that people want it. There's a core set of plugins that we will probably never create in PowerToys Run as from a PowerToys stance. So that would be a fantastic reason to do it. The other thing we really haven't done is battle harden the system to, if people want to do certain things, we probably should battle harden a bit more if we open up an open source or a marketplace.
Like, another question we had was, these are open source projects. What would happen if sort of the Windows team decided to incorporate some of these features directly into the core OS? How does that fit with the open source philosophy?
There's two great open source examples would be Windows Terminal, which is the #2 open source repository at Microsoft. That is an open source project, and it ships now in Windows. The other one is Calculator. Calculator is an open source project at Microsoft, and it's a great example of an item shipping as part of the OS. There's we're proactively talking about how we can do certain things and do graduation plans from PowerToys into the operating system, but time will tell.
Yeah, it's doable. Yeah, because I get, like you said, when you started that right at the beginning, some of these features, like you mentioned about, say, fancy zones, as we get used to as this technology goes from edge cases into the core operating system, you can then look at how you move those and expose those features directly into the core operating system, and then PowerToys picks up new edge case features.
Yeah, and one potential thing is the PowerToys could be leveraged as, here is a implementation sample, and how PowerToys implemented something may not be how the operating system has to implement it. The operating system has to deal with way more edge cases than PowerToys has to. PowerToys operates in user mode where the OS does not. So like crazy things like Z-depth buffers and stuff come in, and it's just fun watching it, all these cool crazy things and all the cool things that PowerToys helps influence. Actually, one of the things, as I'm literally looking at my screen, is if you're on Windows 11, there is the mute button in Windows 11. So video conference mute helped get data based on user information for like issues and comments and like how things were trending. Like, did people like this? Did they like that? And it helped influence what happened in that implementation for the muting inside of the OS. So like, you now know your microphone is in use from the taskbar.
Yeah, that's a great example that the community's helped. You get that feedback, and then it's gone into the core product. But then the version that's in PowerToys is that more extreme version of it.
Or like
you said with Educate.
Another great example is virtual desktops. There's a lot of great things that were on virtual desktops asks in PowerToys. I helped the virtual desktop team come up with some stuff for Windows 11. So that data magically, as soon as those things were in the insider build and we could talk about them, you saw me go done, built in, done, built in. And then that helps give additional information back into Windows and help drive features back in. So if people do want to give feedback, the best spot typically, if it is dealing with Windows, is Windows Feedback Hub. There is, lots of different things that come into that, but the reason why that is super important is that is one of the base sources of information. And it's not the only, but it is a critical item for feedback.
So for PowerToys then, what's coming next for PowerToys?
Next big one, it's going to sound kind of boring, but we call it Scooby. It's the second chance out of box experience. So right now, if you are a brand new user, you get the Welcome to PowerToys prompt. And PowerToys has because we are continually adding new stuff, tweaking stuff, it would be great if we told people what was coming, what was happening. And we do this via our release notes on GitHub. Not everyone, to my disappointment, reads my wonderful ramblings of what was added. because they can get it through the store. They can get PowerToys through Winget, through just the install, the upgrade button. So we're adding in a, what's new in the current release of PowerToys window, that when you do an upgrade, we'll say this is what's new. And why that is important is when we add in a new utility, some people may not understand the mantra of PowerToys, and they expect it to work a certain way and everything be on or off by default. It's not how we operate. Everything is on by default. If we build something new, it's on by default, and then that can cause a jarring experience. So we want to make people aware, like, hey, we just added in Find My Mouse. Oh, you activate this by double clicking control, and you get this experience. So we want to be able to make people aware of these scenarios. The other one would be like, hey, I guess this actually wouldn't really impact existing users, but it would new users, is terminal for the Quake mode said, we want window key tilde. And from PowerToys stance, that was our shortcut for pulling up Fancy Zone's editor. So now we had a conundrum of, we called dibs first, but you want it. So we changed our shortcut to window key shift tilde. So it's close. It's still fingerable for the shortcut, but it was a happy compromise. But we have to tell people this, and if you're not reading the release notes, you might not realize that. So it was a new user only change, but there are changes where we might do something in the future where something might get turned off by default.
Yeah. So where's the best place then listeners and viewers can go then to get started with PowerToys?
If you want to, you can go to the GitHub repository, which is github.com/Microsoft/PowerToys. We're in the Windows Store. We're on Winget. We're also on just the GitHub release page and all these different ways. I'll send you a link and you can put a nice little overlay.
Yep, I'll put them in the show notes.
To get PowerToys, we are a rapid incubation team, so we ship monthly. I cannot stress that enough, and we love building out new stuff and trying out stuff and seeing what works. If something doesn't work for you, or if there is a bug, please tell us, and we'll do our best to try to work on it, fix it. We tend to pick themes on what we work on month to month, and we do have a sprint board showing this is kind of what we're going to try to do. Crashing bugs tend to be the highest priority bugs. So yeah.
Excellent. Well, it's been absolutely fascinating talking to you. I actually love the whole program, everything about it. So where can listeners and viewers find more from you as well? I don't know, you're active on Twitter.
I am active on the Twitters, Clint Rutkas, so at CLINTRUTKAS. I'm on GitHub. My email for Microsoft is always thrown out there if you have direct problems or things you want to care about. It's Clint_Rutkas at Microsoft.com. So I'm super clever and creative on my usernames and passwords, or not passwords, but email addresses. So yeah, love to get feedback, and we try to be hyper transparent on PowerToys. So if you have an issue, if you have a problem, please post it on PowerToys. Treat it as you would if you had your own bug. Like if you say something didn't work, my immediate response is, what didn't work? Like PowerToys is, as we literally talked for an entire hour, it's like 15 separate utilities at this point, if not more. So everything, like if you say PowerToys didn't work, immediately it's what didn't work. And help get, the more information we get and understand, the quicker we're able to diagnose stuff. And that's like mission critical. There was actually a bug where things were not rendering, and we couldn't figure out why. We couldn't reproduce it. And then finally, we started noticing in the logs, like, oh, this person's using this app. And we're like, what graphic card do you have? And it turns out it was a bug with NVIDIA's driver. So all they had to do was either change from 10-bit color to 8-bit color, or upgrade to a newer driver pack, and it just solved itself. But it was noticing the trends that told us what it was, and we're like, literally, I can't reproduce it, so I don't know how to do this. We're not saying it's not happening. We can see it's clearly happening from the screenshot. We just don't know why it's happening. It turns out it's something 100% independent to PowerToys, but it was impacting our users, so we had to go look at it and try to investigate it.
Yeah, that's the great thing about the community, is where you get all that feedback through there as well.
Yeah, and that's why we love interacting. Like, you see, hopefully people have seen me go, like, let's go schedule a Teams call. Like, help me help you, because I can't reproduce it on my system. So something's clearly happening. Let's go look at why it's happening.
Yeah, excellent. Well, it's been absolutely brilliant show. We really enjoyed it, and I'm sure the listeners will enjoy it too as well. So I really do appreciate you taking time out of your schedule to join us today. And we'll get you back on in the future talking more PowerToys.
Yeah, great. Awesome. Thank you.
That was fantastic. Really enjoyed that. Learned a lot there. Really enjoyed that chat, and just the whole thing of open source and Microsoft PowerToys together, how things have changed over the last whatever years we've been doing this show.
Yeah, indeed, and just the PowerToys thing is just such an inspirational project. I think there's so many things in there which are just so useful to people, and yet it's been driven by the community, with Microsoft's help almost. It's great to see.
Yeah, and even the sort of questions about how open source fits in with the rest of Windows, it works really well. So that was a fantastic show. We'll be back next week with our regular show. I'm hoping to have something new to show you next week. We never know, we might do. So we'll be back same time, same place next week. See you then.
Indeed, well, take care.